Hi everyone, I'm Choma. For this discussion, I'll be reflecting on the reading we were given titled Cross Cultural Competencies in Evaluation by Lee, and I'll also be applying it to the scenario we were given this week in school. So, the goal for this discussion is to understand how evaluation works in a cultural mixed environment, and more importantly, how culture, identity, and power affect performance and the way we interpret data. So let me quickly explain the scenario. We're all on the same page. We have a company that trains teams across different locations using the same approach, especially around how to ask for a sale. But after the training, the results were not the same. Some locations were performing well while others were struggling. So the problem now is, why is the same training producing different results? From the reading by Lee, one key idea stood out for me. He explains that evaluation is shaped by culture, identity, and power. And culture is not just visible things like language or behavior, it includes deeper things like how people communicate, how they see authority, and how they make decisions. So, one major obstacle in this situation is misinterpreting performance because it's very easy to look at the data and say one team is underperforming. But when you bring in the idea of culture, you realize that people may not respond to the same training in the same way. For example, this scenario focuses a lot on asking for a sale. And I came across something interesting that said many customers don't actually buy because they were never clearly asked. In some places, being direct and asking for a sale works really well. But in other places, that same approach can feel too aggressive. So someone may understand what to do, but still not act on it. Another obstacle is communication and power. In some location, people may not openly express challenges, especially if there is hierarchy. Lee explains that people respond based on how they see the evaluator authority. So sometimes the data you collect may not fully reflect what is actually happening. So overall, there are some of the key obstacles I would face when conducting this evaluation in a culturally mixed environment. So when designing this evaluation, I can't just use one approach for everyone. First, I need to make sure the tools I use actually fit the context because the same survey question can mean different things to different groups. Another important thing is defining success because success may not mean the same thing everywhere. In some places, success may be closing quickly. In others, it may be building trust and relationship first. So I don't define success properly. I may judge performance incorrectly if I don't define success properly. Also, data without context can be misleading. So, low performance numbers don't always mean poor performance. It could mean the approach doesn't match how people operate in that environment. I've actually experienced something similar in my own work with agrodemy. We collected feedback from learners, we had data, but it didn't explain why people were dropping off because the questions were too general. So we had numbers but no real understanding. Another important part of this reading is power and privilege. As an evaluator, I have power because I decide what to measure, what matters, how results are interpreted. So I'm not just observing, I'm actually shaping the outcome. And that power is not experienced in the same way in every location. So in some places, people may agree even when they don't. In others, people may challenge openly. So I have to be aware of how I am perceived in each context. So to address these challenges, there are a few steps I will take to ensure that this evaluation is effective. So one step I will take is working with people who understand the local context, people who can help bridge the gap between the evaluation and the culture. Another step is asking questions instead of assuming. This really make it clear that you cannot fully know a culture, but you can learn how to ask the right question. I would also test my tools before using them fully because what I think is clear may not be clear to others. And honestly, the most important step is building trust because if people don't trust me, they won't give me honest responses, and that affects my entire evaluation. So, my biggest takeaway from this is that evaluation is not just technical, it's about understanding people, culture, and context. In this scenario, the performance differences are not just about training, they're about how people shape communication, behavior, and decision. And if we ignore that, we may be solving the wrong problem. Thank you for listening. I really like to hear your own thoughts. Do you think issues like this are mostly about training or more about cultural context? For me, as a Nigerian within Africa, I think it's more of a cultural context, but I would be excited to hear what you think. Thank you.